What if I told you that the US government is hiding a catastrophic deadline that could force 40 million Americans to abandon their homes within the next 3 years? Nevada isn't just keeping secrets. It's sitting on a ticking time bomb that could trigger the largest mass migration in American history. And not only that, we're covering 30 shocking secrets about Nevada that even locals don't know, each one more disturbing than the last. Building up to number 1, which reveals why major southwestern cities might become completely uninhabitable before 2030. You need to hear this. Let's get started. At number 30, we have something straight out of a horror movie. Nevada has over 600 ghost towns scattered across the desert, more than any other state in America. These aren't just abandoned buildings. We're talking about entire communities that disappeared so quickly people left everything exactly where it was. Tables are still set for dinner, with plates and silverware covered in dust. Cash registers in old saloons still have money inside, untouched for over a century. Personal belongings, photographs, children's toys, all just sitting there frozen in time. It's like everyone vanished in an instant, and nobody ever came back to collect their lives. These ghost towns are scattered throughout the state, hidden in remote desert valleys and mountain ranges. Some are accessible by dirt roads, others you need four-wheel drive and a guide to even find. Walking through them feels like stepping into another dimension where time stopped, but everything else kept decaying around these abandoned memories. Coming in at number 29 is a story about how Nevada turned to the mob for help. During the Great Depression, the state legalized gambling specifically to fund schools when they were completely broke. On the surface, this seems like a desperate but creative solution. But what happened next is where things get really dark and corrupt. The mob didn't just participate in Nevada's gambling industry. They actually controlled the Nevada Tax Commission for decades. This was the government body responsible for regulating casinos and making sure everything was legitimate. Except it wasn't legitimate at all, because organized crime was literally regulating itself through official government channels, with nobody stopping them. This means every decision about licensing, taxation, and oversight was being made by the same criminals who owned the casinos. They were writing their own rules, investigating their own crimes, and deciding their own punishments. Nevada essentially handed the keys to the entire state economy to the mafia and looked the other way for generations. At number 28, things get weird with underwater conspiracies in the desert. Lake Mead and Walker Lake have reports from multiple witnesses who've seen strange wakes and unexplained disturbances on the water. But here's where it gets really strange. People claim they've spotted what looks like submarines in these landlocked desert lakes. The theory is that the Navy uses these remote Nevada lakes to secretly test submarines through underground tunnel systems that connect all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Now that sounds completely insane because these lakes are in the middle of the desert hundreds of miles from the coast. But witnesses insist they've seen periscopes and underwater craft. The official explanation is that it's just boats creating unusual wake patterns or natural phenomena causing strange water movements. But the conspiracy theorists point out that these lakes have unusual depth and the government has hidden facilities all over Nevada. Whether it's real or not, enough people have reported seeing something that it's become local legend. Number 27 is where the government crossed a line that's truly horrifying. In the 1950s, the military used Nevada for biological warfare testing on actual civilians. They released massive clouds of zinc-cadmium sulfide over populated areas to see how chemical weapons would spread through cities. Thousands of people were exposed without any knowledge or consent whatsoever. This wasn't testing in remote desert areas away from people. They deliberately sprayed this chemical compound over towns where families lived, where children played outside, where people were just going about their daily lives. The military wanted to understand dispersal patterns for chemical attacks, so they turned Nevada residents into unwilling test subjects for weapons of war. The long-term health effects were never properly studied, and the government didn't admit what they'd done until decades later. Families who lived through this period have reported unusual cancer clusters and health problems, but connecting it directly to the testing is nearly impossible now. Nevada was treated like an expendable testing ground. At number 26, we enter straight-up paranormal territory on the extraterrestrial highway. This stretch of Nevada Route 375 has a documented phenomenon that dozens of drivers have experienced, called missing time. People report losing hours with absolutely no memory of what happened, finding their cars miles from where they last remember being. These aren't drunk drivers or people falling asleep at the wheel. Their vehicles are found functioning perfectly with no mechanical problems, no accidents, no explanation for the gap in time or distance traveled. Some wake up on the side of the road confused. Others find themselves in completely different towns with no idea how they got there. The extraterrestrial highway runs right past Area 51 and other classified military installations, which makes some people think it's related to secret government technology. Others believe it's genuine alien abduction activity. Either way, something is happening on that road that can't be easily explained, and it's happened enough times that locals take it seriously. Number 25 sounds like science fiction, but it's documented reality. Beneath the Nevada desert, there's a massive interconnected tunnel system built during the Cold War that could house the entire US government in case of nuclear war. We're not talking about small bunkers. These are underground cities with everything needed to survive for decades. These facilities have stockpiled food supplies, their own power generation systems, water purification, living quarters, and everything else required to sustain thousands of people underground for years. The tunnels connect multiple sites across Nevada and supposedly extend to other states as well. This was built to survive nuclear winter and ensure government continuity. Most of these facilities are still classified and maintained today, even though the Cold War ended decades ago. The entrances are hidden and heavily guarded, and large portions of Nevada are restricted military land, partially because these underground cities are still operational beneath them. The scale of what's under Nevada is staggering. At number 24, we have a grim discovery that reveals Nevada's violent mob history. As Lake Mead's water level drops due to drought, it started revealing things that were meant to stay hidden forever. In 2022, a body was found inside a barrel with a gunshot wound, wearing clothes and shoes that date back to the mob era. This victim was clearly executed and dumped in the lake decades ago, probably in the 1970s, based on forensic analysis. But here's what's really disturbing. Police estimate there could be dozens more bodies still submerged in Lake Mead that haven't been discovered yet. As the water continues dropping to record lows, they expect to find more. Lake Mead was the perfect place for the mob to dispose of bodies, because it's deep, remote, and the water was high enough that nothing would ever surface. But now with the water level 170 feet lower than it was in 2000, the lake is giving up its secrets. Every new low reveals more evidence of Nevada's dark past. Number 23 is about one of America's greatest engineering achievements, hiding a terrible secret. The Hoover Dam was built so quickly that when workers fell into the wet concrete, they were left entombed inside, rather than halt construction. The project was under immense pressure to finish on time, and stopping to recover bodies would cause massive delays. The official death toll is 96 workers, but this number is widely believed to be drastically underreported. Some estimates claim over 200 people actually died during construction when you include accidents, heat stroke, carbon monoxide poisoning in the diversion tunnels, and yes, workers who fell into concrete and were never recovered. The dam is essentially a tomb. The conditions were brutal, with workers laboring in 120-degree heat inside the canyon. Safety regulations barely existed, and the pressure to complete the dam during the Depression meant worker lives were considered expendable. The Hoover Dam stands as an engineering marvel, but it was built on the bodies of men whose deaths were never properly acknowledged. At number 22, we have an unexpected ecological crisis that most people don't even know exists. Nevada has America's largest concentration of wild burro populations, and these aren't native animals. They're descendants of burros abandoned by miners in the 1800s who left them behind when the gold and silver rushes ended. Now they're everywhere. These wild burros have become such a massive problem that the government is secretly culling thousands of them annually. The issue is that burros drink enormous amounts of water, and Nevada already has critical water shortages. With tens of thousands of wild burros draining springs and water sources, native wildlife can't survive and the ecosystem is collapsing. The government doesn't publicize the culling operations because it would create public backlash. People love burros and see them as symbols of the Old West. But wildlife managers know that if the burro population isn't controlled, it will devastate Nevada's already fragile desert environment and accelerate the water crisis that's threatening everything. Number 21 is one of the most horrific government cover-ups in American history. The Nevada test site detonated nuclear bombs so close to Las Vegas that radioactive fallout rained down on the city regularly throughout the 1950s and 60s. This wasn't accidental. They knew exactly what they were doing and did it anyway. The fallout contaminated milk supplies across Nevada and surrounding states, exposing thousands of children to dangerous levels of radiation. A cancer cluster developed in communities downwind from the test site, but the government denied any connection for 40 years. They lied to the public and insisted the testing was completely safe. It wasn't until decades later that the government finally admitted to downwind exposure and began compensating victims. Studies now estimate that the Nevada test site killed approximately 49,000 Americans through cancer and radiation-related illnesses. Entire communities were sacrificed so the military could test nuclear weapons, and the government knew and covered it up. At number 20, we have a conspiracy that Las Vegas locals whisper about but are terrified to say out loud. The theory is that city officials and state government know exactly when Lake Mead will become unlivable, but they're hiding the real data to prevent mass exodus and complete economic collapse of Nevada. Insiders claim the actual deadline when Las Vegas becomes uninhabitable is 2030, not the public estimate of 2027 that officials keep mentioning. The conspiracy suggests they're deliberately downplaying the severity and pushing the timeline further out to prevent panic and keep people investing in property and businesses until it's too late to leave without losing everything. Whether this conspiracy is true or not, the fact that locals believe their own government would hide apocalyptic water data shows how serious the crisis has become. People know something catastrophic is coming, and they don't trust the official numbers. The fear is that by the time the truth comes out, millions will be trapped. Number 19 is about the most famous secret base in the world. Area 51's official existence wasn't acknowledged by the US government until 2013, despite literally everyone knowing about it for decades. The base was the worst-kept secret in American military history, but the government just refused to admit it existed. The CIA finally admitted Area 51 exists only because of a Freedom of Information Act request about the U-2 spy plane program. When researchers were investigating the history of the spy plane, classified documents mentioned the Nevada test facility, and the CIA had no choice but to acknowledge it. Even then, they revealed as little as possible. For decades before 2013, the government's official position was that Area 51 didn't exist, even though satellite images clearly showed the base, even though thousands of people worked there, even though it appeared on maps. This absurd denial became a joke, but it also showed how far the government will go to maintain secrecy. At number 18, we learn how workers actually get to Area 51. The base has its own private airline called Janet Airlines, with unmarked red and white planes that fly workers from Las Vegas to the facility daily. These aren't normal flights. Passengers must sign non-disclosure agreements before boarding and surrender all electronics, including phones and cameras. Janet Airlines operates out of a secure terminal at Las Vegas's airport that regular travelers can't access. The planes have no logos or identification markings. Flight schedules are classified. Everything about these flights is designed for maximum secrecy. Workers live double lives, telling their families they work normal jobs, while actually commuting to America's most classified base. The very existence of Janet Airlines proves Area 51 is enormous and employs thousands of people. You don't need a private airline for a small facility. The scale of the daily commuter operation suggests whatever happens at Area 51 requires a massive workforce, yet we still have almost no idea what they actually do there. Number 17 reveals just how massive Area 51 really is. Groom Lake, the dry lake bed at the base, has runways so long they're visible from space. These aren't normal runways, built for regular aircraft. They're designed for experimental planes that officially don't exist, aircraft that require extraordinary distances to take off and land safely. Satellite images show massive hangars at Area 51 that are large enough to house multiple Boeing 747s with room to spare. Whatever they're building or testing inside those hangars has to be absolutely enormous. The infrastructure alone suggests technology that's decades beyond what the public knows exists. This isn't a small research facility. The fact that you can see these structures from space, but the government still won't talk about what happens there, shows the level of secrecy involved. They're not even trying to hide the physical base anymore, they just refuse to explain what it's for. That level of ongoing classification, decades after construction, suggests truly extraordinary secrets. At number 16, we see the government actively expanding secrecy around Area 51. Even in recent years. In 2019, the Air Force expanded the restricted airspace around the base and seized Tikaboo Peak, which was the last remaining public vantage point where civilians could see Area 51 from a distance with binoculars or cameras. Tikaboo Peak was 26 miles from the base, far outside the perimeter fence, on public land that hikers had used for years. But the government decided even that distant view was too much access. Now they threaten hikers with arrest if they try to reach the peak. They've pushed the secrecy zone even further out. This expansion in 2019 happened more than 60 years after Area 51 was established. Why would they need more secrecy now? What change that required eliminating even distant observation? The fact that they're still expanding restrictions in modern times suggests whatever happens at Area 51 is ongoing and possibly accelerating, not winding down. Number 15 involves Bob Lazar, who claims he worked on alien spacecraft at Area 51's S4 facility in the late 19th. His story sounds completely insane. Reverse engineering alien propulsion systems inside a secret base. But here's what's strange. The government appears to have erased all records of his education and employment history. Lazar claims he has degrees from MIT and Caltech and worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Both schools deny he ever attended, and Los Alamos says he never worked there. But witnesses have come forward, saying they knew Lazar at Los Alamos, and his name appeared in a Los Alamos phone directory from that era. Whether Lazar is telling the truth about aliens is debatable, but something weird definitely happened with his background. Either he's an elaborate con artist who somehow got his name into Los Alamos records, or the government really did scrub his history. The inability to verify anything about him makes his claims impossible to prove or disprove, At number 14, we have Area 51's sister facility that most people have never heard of. Tonopah Test Range is where the F-107 Nighthawk stealth fighter was secretly developed and operated for nearly a decade before the public knew it existed. This aircraft flew combat missions while officially not existing at all. Pilots who flew the F-117 lived double lives for years, lying to their families about what they did for work. They couldn't tell anyone they were flying the world's first stealth fighter. Their spouses thought they had boring desk jobs or flew regular planes. The psychological toll of maintaining that level of secrecy was enormous. The F-117 was finally revealed to the public in 1988, but it had been flying since 1981. 7 years of operational missions, completely in secret. If they could hide an entire fleet of revolutionary aircraft for that long, what else is flying out of Nevada test ranges right now that won't be revealed for decades? Number 13 takes us to one of the strangest natural phenomena in Nevada. Devil's Hole is a limestone cave with a pool that drops at least 500 feet straight down into the earth. But here's the thing, nobody actually knows how deep it goes, because no one's ever reached the bottom. It might go much deeper. Inside this impossibly deep pool lives the Devil's Hole pupfish, which has survived there in complete isolation for 60,000 years. These fish exist nowhere else on Earth. They've been trapped in this single pool for thousands of generations, inbreeding in what scientists call an evolutionary dead end. Yet somehow they're still alive. The Devil's Hole pupfish is the rarest fish on the planet, with only a few hundred individuals remaining. Scientists don't fully understand how such a small, isolated population has avoided extinction. The gene pool is incredibly limited, yet they persist. Devil's Hole represents a biological mystery that challenges what we think we know about evolution. At number 12, Devil's Hole gets even stranger. The water level inside the cave rises and falls in response to seismic activity thousands of miles away. When earthquakes hit Japan, Chile, or Indonesia, the water in Devil's Hole reacts within minutes. This proves there's a massive underground aquifer system beneath Nevada. Scientists don't fully understand this underground water system, or how it's connected across such vast distances. The fact that water in the Nevada desert responds immediately to earthquakes on the other side of the planet shows geological connections we haven't mapped. There are entire underground systems beneath the American West that remain mysterious. This also means Nevada's water crisis might be connected to geological forces we can't control. If underground aquifers are linked across continents and respond to seismic activity, then drilling wells or redirecting surface water might have consequences nobody can predict. We're dealing with systems we don't understand, messing with water we desperately need. Number 11 brings us to Pyramid Lake, and one of Nevada's most tragic legends. The lake has a mysterious underwater rock formation called the Stone Mother, that native Paiute toad legends say is a woman who was turned to stone while crying for her lost children. The lake is stunning, but it has a dark reputation. Pyramid Lake has taken over 200 lives with no bodies ever recovered. Swimmers, boaters, and even experienced water rescue personnel have disappeared into the lake and simply never came back. There are unexplained currents that pull people under, cold spots where the water temperature drops suddenly, and areas where drowning victims sink and never surface. The Paiute people have always said Pyramid Lake is sacred and dangerous, that the spirits of the Stone Mother's children are in the water and still claim lives. Whether you believe in legends or not, the fact remains that over 200 people have died there, and the lake refuses to give them back. Something about Pyramid Lake is legitimately deadly. At number 10, we go beneath Las Vegas to discover a hidden homeless population that most tourists and even many residents don't know exists. Over 1,000 people are living in the 600 miles of flood tunnels beneath the city. These aren't temporary shelters. These are entire communities that have formed underground with their own social structures. People have moved furniture down into the tunnels, set up cooking areas with camping stoves, decorated their spaces with whatever they can salvage. Different sections are controlled by different groups with territorial boundaries. There are tunnel communities that have existed for years with semi-permanent residents who rarely come to the surface. The flood tunnels are incredibly dangerous because when storms hit the desert, water rushes through them with almost no warning. People have drowned in the tunnels during flash floods, but for those living there, the danger is worth it compared to living on the streets above. Las Vegas has a massive hidden underclass. Coming in at number 9, we learn how casinos use psychological warfare to keep you gambling. The layouts are deliberately designed as mazes to disorient you so you can't find the exit. There are no windows or clocks so you lose track of time. Bathrooms are strategically placed so you have to walk past slot machines. But it gets more sinister. Some casinos pump extra oxygen into the gaming floor to keep you awake and alert longer than you normally would be. The combination of increased oxygen, no natural light, no sense of time, and the constant stimulation of lights and sounds creates an environment designed to keep you gambling for hours. The carpet patterns are intentionally busy and sometimes slightly nauseating, so you look up at the machines instead of down at the floor. The maze design isn't accidental confusion. It's calculated psychological manipulation. Every single design choice in a casino is about keeping you inside and keeping you playing. Nothing is left to chance. At number 8, we discover what's really watching you in casinos. Every major casino has a secret surveillance room, called the Eye in the Sky, with cameras covering every square inch of the gaming floor. But it's not just recording, it's actively analyzing you with facial recognition technology that identifies card counters and advantage players instantly. The moment you walk through the door, the system can identify if you've been banned from other properties. It recognizes advantage players who've won too much at other casinos. All the major casino corporations share this data with each other. If you're flagged in one casino, you're flagged everywhere on the strip. Security can zoom in close enough to read the serial numbers on bills and see exactly which cards are being dealt at every table. They track betting patterns and can identify counting systems being used. The technology is so advanced that you're being analyzed constantly and you have no idea it's happening until security escorts you out. Number 7 is about what Lake Mead's dropping water levels are revealing. The lake has dropped 170 feet since 2000 and is now at just 27% capacity. As the water recedes, it's exposing things that have been hidden underwater for decades. We already mentioned the bodies, but there's so much more. Sunken B-29 bombers from World War II have emerged from the lake. An entire town called St. Thomas that was deliberately flooded in 1938 during the lake's creation is now visible again with foundations and structures exposed. Indigenous artifacts thousands of years old are appearing on the former lake bottom as the water retreats. Every new low water record reveals more history and more secrets. The lake is becoming an archaeological site as things emerge that were meant to stay submerged forever. But these discoveries are bittersweet because they're only visible because Lake Mead is dying. We're watching an ecological and infrastructure catastrophe unfold in slow motion. At number 6, we confront the apocalyptic nature of Nevada's water crisis. Lake Mead has a 7-year supply of water at current usage rates, which sounds okay until you understand what happens next. When Lake Mead hits 895 feet above sea level, which is just 150 feet lower than today, everything stops. At 895 feet, the Hoover Dam stops generating electricity for Nevada, Arizona, and California. 3 states lose power. But more catastrophically, water stops flowing past the dam entirely. The Colorado River downstream from Hoover Dam runs dry. 25 million people across the Southwest lose their water supply completely. Not reduced water, no water. So, this isn't a distant possibility. This is coming within years at current drought rates. The infrastructure that powers and provides water for the entire American Southwest depends on Lake Mead staying above a specific level. Once it drops below that level, the system collapses. There's no backup plan that can support 25 million people. Number 5 reveals Las Vegas's desperate emergency plan. The city gets 90% of its water from Lake Mead through 2 intake pipes that draw water from different depths in the lake. But as the water level drops, those intake pipes are being exposed. Within 5 years, they'll be sucking air instead of water. Las Vegas is building a third straw, an emergency intake pipe 860 feet below the current lake surface. This is the deepest they can possibly go, while still accessing water. It's a last-ditch effort to keep drawing water even as the lake drops to record lows. This third straw represents the city's final backup plan. The problem is that if drought conditions continue, even the third straw will eventually be exposed. You can only go so deep before you hit the bottom of the lake. Las Vegas is buying time, but not solving the fundamental problem that there isn't enough water in the Colorado River system to support current population levels. At number 4, we learn that the entire Western water crisis is built on a lie. The Colorado River Compact was signed in 1922 to allocate water rights between 7 states and Mexico. The negotiators based their water allocations on flow data from what turned out to be the wettest decade in 1,200 years. This means the legal framework that governs water rights for the entire American Southwest is based on fraudulent data. The compact assumes there's way more water in the Colorado River than actually exists in normal conditions. Every state was promised water that doesn't exist. The math literally doesn't work and never did. There is not enough water in the Colorado River to fulfill all the legal obligations to Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, Wyoming, and Mexico. The system was designed to fail from the beginning. Now a century later, we're hitting the wall, where reality doesn't match the promises made in 19... Number 3 addresses who's really responsible for the water crisis. California takes 4.4 million acre-feet of Colorado River water annually, while Nevada only gets 300,000 acre-feet. Yet Las Vegas is constantly blamed for the water shortage when the city uses a fraction of what California takes. The math doesn't add up. Agriculture uses 70% of Colorado River water to grow crops in the desert, much of it water-intensive crops like alfalfa that get exported to other countries. Cities like Los Angeles waste more water through leaky infrastructure and inefficient systems than Las Vegas uses in total. But Vegas gets the blame because of its reputation. The narrative that Las Vegas is draining Lake Mead with pools and fountains is a convenient lie that lets agriculture in California avoid accountability. Nevada has the smallest allocation of any Colorado River state yet faces the most immediate crisis. The real water wasters are protected while Vegas gets vilified. At number 2, we uncover what might be Nevada's most valuable secret. The federal government knows Nevada is sitting on lithium deposits worth trillions of dollars. There's enough lithium beneath the Nevada desert to make America energy independent and dominate the global electric vehicle battery market for decades. The problem is that mining this lithium would destroy Thacker Pass, which is a sacred site for Native American tribes and critical habitat for sage grouse and other endangered species. Extracting the lithium would create an environmental catastrophe, contaminating groundwater, destroying ecosystems, and desecrating indigenous cultural sites that have existed for thousands of years. So the government faces an impossible choice between national energy security and environmental protection. The lithium is worth trillions and could transform America's economy and energy independence, but accessing it requires sacrificing Nevada's environment and Native American heritage. This conflict is intensifying as demand for lithium explodes globally, with no easy resolution. But number 1 is where everything comes together into a catastrophe that could reshape America. Lake Mead is projected to hit deadpool status by 20. Deadpool means water won't flow past Hoover Dam anymore. The reservoir drops so low that gravity can't move water downstream even if there's water in the lake. What the government isn't publicizing is the domino effect. This triggers. When Lake Mead hits deadpool, Hoover Dam stops generating electricity for Nevada, Arizona, and California. Millions of people lose power. But that's just the beginning of the crisis. Water stops flowing to Phoenix, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and Southern California entirely. We're talking about 40 million people who suddenly have no water supply. Phoenix and Las Vegas become uninhabitable within weeks. You can't live in a desert city without water infrastructure. Los Angeles and Southern California face mandatory evacuation orders. The entire Southwest faces the largest mass migration in American history. The economic collapse would be unprecedented. Las Vegas, which depends entirely on tourism and is already struggling with heat records, would be completely abandoned within a decade. The city would become America's first major climate change ghost town. Everything built there over the past 80 years would be worthless overnight. Phoenix, which is already the hottest major city in America, and growing rapidly, would face the same fate. You can't sustain millions of people in 115-degree heat without water and electricity. The entire city becomes unlivable. Property values crash to zero. The economic losses would be measured in trillions of dollars. Southern California would face partial evacuation, with agriculture collapsing entirely. The Imperial Valley, which produces massive amounts of America's winter vegetables using Colorado River water, would turn back into desert. Food production crashes. Water rationing becomes extreme. The region that's been America's agricultural powerhouse for a century is finished. The federal government has no plan to relocate 40 million people. There's no infrastructure in other parts of the country to absorb that population. Housing, jobs, schools, hospitals, everything would need to be built from scratch. The migration would destabilize the entire nation economically and politically. It would be America's first climate refugee crisis. Climate models show this isn't speculation. It's increasingly likely under current warming trends. The Colorado River Basin is experiencing a mega drought that's the worst in 1,200 years. Snowpack in the Rockies that feeds the river is decreasing every year. This trend is expected to continue and potentially accelerate. Some scientists think we've already passed the point of no return, and that even if precipitation returned to normal levels immediately, which it won't, Lake Mead wouldn't recover fast enough. The system is too far degraded. The momentum toward deadpool might be unstoppable at this point. The political situation makes it worse because the 7 Colorado River states can't agree on mandatory cuts. California refuses to reduce agriculture water use. Arizona and Nevada are already taking cuts, but it's not enough. Everyone knows the system is failing, but nobody wants to be the one to make the sacrifices necessary. Las Vegas has prepared better than most cities with aggressive conservation and water recycling programs. But conservation can't save you when the entire water supply disappears. The city has done everything right, and it still won't be enough. That's how severe this crisis is. Individual action can't fix a systemic collapse. The most disturbing part is how little the general public understands what's coming. People are still moving to Las Vegas and Phoenix in large numbers. They're buying houses and starting businesses in cities that might not exist in 10 years. The disconnect between reality and public awareness is staggering. Lake Mead hitting Deadpool in 2027 would be the trigger event that forces America to confront climate change in the most brutal way possible. The abandonment of major Southwest cities would prove that climate change isn't a future threat, it's a present catastrophe. Nevada's secrets are about to become America's nightmare, and we're running out of time to prevent it.